Well, that's a big question, isn't it? So I'm a fiercely independent person. I have been for a number of years. I think probably since I was in my late teens. My first job was working for a property company, actually. And I worked as an asset manager, which I really, really enjoyed. Pressure on land and property, that's just, fuck's sake. And, I did a great job with some consultancy work on this building in Middlesbrough on Teesside. And the chap that I used to work for didn't want to pay me for it. And that was one of the turning points in my kind of development of me, if you like. So I decided at that point I never wanted to be employed by anyone ever again. I then decided that I wanted to get back into commercial property. That's what I always loved doing and what I still love doing now. I kind of stumbled into buying residential property, and that was at a time in the early 2000s, I suppose, when there were still things that around like gifted deposits, which was where you could buy residential property and you could actually get a gift back from the lender, so they would virtually cover all of your deposit. Well, I thought that was fantastic. And that evolved, and I got involved in a club which was buying residential properties below market value. I bought nearly 100 of them in about 4.5 years. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And I realised in the course of doing that I'd just created this massive headache, because what I thought was going to be fairly passive and was just going to give me an income each month, it did, but it also needed a lot of management. So I absolutely didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. My great-grandfather actually was an entrepreneur. He owned a number of hotels and houses, I think, actually in Durham. So my family come from the northeast. But that's the only entrepreneur that has been in our family. And so my dad worked for the local authority right up until retirement, actually. He worked for the education department. My mother was a teacher, and so there was no hint of any advice or guidance on entrepreneurship, property, land, or anything like that. The turning point, I think, really, as I say, was there were two things. I used to be in the Air Cadets when I was younger. And I really, really wanted to join the Air Force. And I had this love of planes and flying and all that kind of thing. My dad would take me up to Newcastle Airport and we'd watch the planes taking off and landing and all this kind of thing. I loved it. And I wanted to be in the Air Force. And then in my mid to late teens, the government introduced some targets for reducing the size of the armed forces. And I remember talking to my dad about this at the time, and he said, it's probably not really a growing environment, this. It's not a growing industry. Thinking back to what I was just saying before about being in abundance, I didn't realise that at the time, but I thought, I want to be joining something which is not growing, it's actually contracting. And I just didn't at the time. And that kind of started to set the alarm bells sounding and got me thinking, well, what else can I do? So probably it was in about 2008, 2009, I think. So I'd built this huge portfolio of buy-to-let properties. My kids are 14 and 15 now. So my eldest was born in 2006, December 2006. My youngest, Hannah, she was born in February 2008. So it was about 15 months apart. I realized that in the course of building this huge portfolio, the way that we were buying them actually was really quite destructive. It was quite dangerous, because at the time we could buy a house and remortgage it the next day. So we could actually remortgage to more than we bought the house for. So I could buy a house and the next day get 10,000 quid back cash. And a lot of people were doing the same. We were just buying houses and relying on the cash back to live on, and without really focusing on the cash flow and looking after the properties and getting really good tenants in. That was almost an afterthought. And it sounds a ridiculous thing to say this now, but what happened at the time was I'd built this massive portfolio and we were getting, 5, 10, 20,000 pounds a month back in cash to live on. And then the financial crisis hit. Mortgage Express pulled out of the remortgage market, and overnight it just sent everyone into an absolute spiral of hysteria. So I suddenly realised that I had this huge problem on my hands. And my youngest child, Hannah, she was very, very ill when she was born. So she was born on the 29th of February 2008.
She was very ill when she was born?
Yeah. To start with, for the first week, we brought her home and she seemed fine. But there was just something not quite right. She was just crying and it just wasn't good at all. And so we took her into hospital and they said, they did all sorts of tests on her and they said, we think she's got viral meningitis. So she had to be in hospital for about a week. I think it was about 10 days actually. So I had a 15-month-old at home. My wife stayed in the hospital with my youngest daughter, and at the same time, my dad was in hospital with prostate cancer. So yeah, it was difficult. And then obviously my daughter recovered, my dad was fine, all that kind of thing. And it all, but it took a while. It took a while to come through it. Can I answer it by answering another question? Because my old mentor,
like a politician.
my old mentor said to me, he said, if there's one person to create a deal out of nothing and to find a way to create a deal, it's Ian. And he told everybody this. So I know that I'm good at creating deals. And I know that sounds really arrogant of me, but I know that I'm good at creating deals and solving problems and actually finding the right solution to suit that person's need. So that's what I'm good at. So Goldbrooke Homes really came about as a result of all four of us being on a networking event not quite 2 years ago actually. It was September 2020. And at the time, I knew that I wanted to get into doing more development. And I'd done a little bit of it in the past, done it really badly, if I'm quite honest with you. I'd made money on one site, lost money on another. It's like the golden rule, never lose money. And I'd managed to lose money on a development. So I knew that I wanted to hook up with some guys who were like-minded, who wanted to get into doing this kind of thing. But it was on a really, really nice site, a big garden next to it. So Rob and I got chatting and I said, and I'm just looking for someone to work with. And he said, I can help you with that. So we just got chatting over dinner. It was a complete fluke. We just managed to sit on the same table. So we actually talked about this recently. We've set our 10-year goals. And our 10-year goals are, we each want to have £10 million in profit at the end of 10 years. And we've kind of de-engineered that so we know exactly what we need to do and how many houses we need to build. We're at the start of this at the moment. We've got sites at the minute with a GDV of about 25 million in, what's that, about 18 months, I guess, maybe a little bit more. And we know where we need to be, how many more sites we need to build and how many more houses we need to build in order to get to that target. So I'm 100% confident we're going to do it, absolutely 100%. Well, first of all, I'd say you really need a great mentor. You've got to have the knowledge of what you're doing. You've got to have a really, really great power team around you. So we've got a fantastic selection of planning consultants. We've got 2 really great planning consultants that I know that we can go to and just pick up the phone and chat to. I've got 2 really great architects, again, that I know that I just pick up the phone and chat to. And if I've got a site I'm not quite sure or I want their advice or guidance on something, then I can just pick the phone up and have a chat to them. I've got a team of really fantastic solicitors that I know that can act exactly how I want them to, that are really creative and will structure the legal agreement around the agreement that I've developed and created with the vendor. That's one thing, having a really, really great team so that you know that you can pick up and go to one of your panel of people, if you like, to get the advice that you need. Second thing, you've obviously got to get educated. A lot of people who get into development go into it with the mindset of this old mindset of the equation is a third. It's a third for the land, a third to build it, and a third of it is profit. It's complete nonsense. There's no formula. It depends where you're buying in the country. So you've got to get educated. You've got to know your numbers. You've got to be able to talk to people as well. You've got to be able to pick up the phone and have a chat to agents, tell them exactly what it is you're doing. So they can contact me through Facebook, LinkedIn, or they can get in contact with Rob. Go to the Goldbrooke Homes website, which is just goldbrookehomes.co.uk. and contact us through there. There's a phone number on the website. You can contact us and send us a message, and yeah, happy to pick up the phone and have a chat.